this testimony about this guy that was he was done with God. So until he finally he said until God said this to him. So it's my first time seeing this video. So we're gonna watch it together and we're gonna comment.
Get the privilege of growing up with a father. My dad lost his dad when he was young. He lived in Denver, and then he moved out to LA. Really smart guy. Started getting involved with some, criminal-minded people, ran with some of the gangs in Compton. Was trying to change his life. Ended up getting my mom pregnant. And my mom grew up in like a kind of a very, very staunch religious household. So she was afraid that if they didn't get married, she'd be like ousted from the family. So they kind of forced the marriage. He was working for UPS and was selling drugs on the side, and eventually lost his job and started selling drugs full time and taking the drugs, which created a split. And my mom had to basically depart and escape because he was spiraling. So it was just me and her, and it was tough. Being in a single parent household, a lot of people would watch me. A lot of family members, friends, because my mom had to work. And so I didn't have this male figure, this male role model to raise me. Some of the people that I looked up to were my uncles who were in gangs, selling drugs. My mom had some guys who she was dating. And one of them abused me pretty severely. I remember being about 10 years old and just being punched in the face, and to the point to where she had to grab some dishes to break them over his head to get me out of that situation. On top of that, I had another babysitter who sexually molested me. She took advantage of me as a kid. So I'm just growing up in this world of chaos and feeling unwanted, feeling like I just didn't have a sense of identity or purpose, just really wrestling with my value. And by middle school, I was always in trouble, always. I was smart, my dad was smart, but, he didn't make it past the 8th grade, but I was just mischievous and just troublesome and getting brought home by the police, getting arrested as a teenager for stealing or doing random things. And I remember my mom said something to me one night. She said, I was probably about 16, and she said, "Man, you're acting like your dad, and this is why I left him." And I think it cut me in a deep way. She wasn't trying to be mean, but it was like I was getting on her nerves, and I remember punching a hole in it.
It's one thing. When you have a child, you should never tell the child that they act like their dad, their father, or their uncle, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Now you're pissing the child off. Now when you say that to the child, so you're telling the child to be like the father. If the father figure is not in him, or if you don't have a father figure, it's gonna be hard for him.
The table, in the glass table, and broke the table, and just frustrated, just angry, and I just remember wanting to die. Just like, just take me out. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of this world. And she wasn't a religious person. Matter of fact, she practiced a little bit of Buddhism. She was a free thinker. She smoked a lot of weed. She just was a free person. So she did not tell me, hey, you need to go to church or anything like that. We barely went to church ever. Like we go on like the Christmas, Easter, rare occasions. But this night, she was so overwhelmed because I was acting out, suicidal, angry. That she said, just read the Bible. And I remember her putting a Bible outside my door, and I just took the Bible and I ripped the pages out and started crumbling them up and threw them on the ground. And I was really rebellious and kind of I felt misunderstood. I felt unwanted. I felt undesired. And I felt like I just didn't have a sense of purpose or worth or value, and I was trying to find it. I was looking for wherever I could find it. I looked for it in women. Was very promiscuous in high school, and just looking for the affection of a woman to like maybe fill this void and this sense of identity and this sense of worth. I looked for it in power. Like, how can I get a lot of money? So I would sell a little bit of drugs from time to time. I worked. I would steal from just whatever. I just wanted a sense of power, so I have value. And then I would feel like maybe if I could just like, achieve, then I would be valuable. So I would just try to be the best at the things that I felt like I was good at. So whether that was sports or whether that was music, I was rapping in school at the lunch table and doing battles against people, just trying to be the best because I just didn't feel valued. I'd been abused. I had been just kind of cast aside, and I didn't know where my sense of worth or value or purpose came from. And so for me, I was spiraling, and I just remember feeling like, man, I don't know where my sense of worth or value or purpose is. And I think I was probably about 18, and I remember going to bed that night, and when I went to sleep, I had this dream. And in the dream, I saw like this mountain underneath a dome, and its dome was golden. And I'm flying over the dome, and then I go inside the dome and underneath it. And when I get down in there, I see like people worshiping and people praying. And I never had a dream like this. It was so vivid and visual. It felt surreal. And I was like, what just happened? What is this about? And I remember feeling like this felt so real. I feel like I've seen this, like the place that I saw was so real. And I remember I had a school project, that's my senior year of high school. I had a school project we had to work on, and I'm in the library, and I just so happened to open up this book, and it was like a geographical book, and when I opened it up, I saw the same dome that was in my dream. It was the Dome of the Rock, which is in Jerusalem. It freaked me out because I was like, I just dreamed about this, and now I'm seeing this. Like, how is this thing in my dream? And I was like, oh, shoot, this might be God trying to talk to me. So I started doing some research on the Dome of the Rock, and I found out that it was kind of obtained by Muslims. So I thought, God is Allah, and I need to follow Allah and become a Muslim. And so I talked to one of my friends who was Muslim. I said, I'm ready. God spoke to me in a dream, and I think Allah is the way. And I got a Quran from him, and I began to study. I hadn't gone to a mosque, but I was planning on it. Initially, I just started studying the Quran and just trying to read books about Islam. And as I was studying and just trying to practice it, I felt like it was just so hard. I was 18 years old, and it was like these rules and so many rules that I just was like, man, how do I do all of this? I have to stop eating this. I have to start doing this. I have to pray this many times a day. And it felt overwhelming, and it felt like, man, I can't keep this up. But I wanted my good to outweigh my bad. And so I was like, well, let me practice this so my good outweighs my bad. But I started to wrestle with this feeling that, man, there's no way I can keep this up. And then how do I know if my good outweighs my bad? And it took me to this place where I felt like, you know what, maybe the dream was a fluke. because none of this seems real. And so I don't know if Islam is the direction I need to move in, because as I'm processing it, it felt hopeless. Like I'm never going to be able to know if I did enough good to outweigh my bad. And it was like, this is a hopeless pursuit for me. So I subscribed to I'm just going to be atheist. Maybe there's no God, because it didn't make sense to me. If this was God and he came to me in this dream, these rules are too hard and there's no way I can do this. So I subscribed to just say, I'm done. And so I remember saying, this is it where I'm at. I'm atheist and I'm cool with that. I had a class with a young lady. Her name was Azehi. I still remember her to this day. And she was a good friend of mine. And she was a Christian. She started talking to me about what she believed in Christianity. And I was like, yeah, I hear you on that, but my grandma did all that stuff, and I just don't think there's a God. You know, I don't believe in God. And another guy heard me say that, and he was an atheist as well, and he came over and he said, I totally agree with you. There's definitely no God. And she just kept pushing back on us. And then he said something. He said, there's no God, there's just us. We're responsible for our future. And it was like a cold, like, I don't know, bucket of water was dropped on my head, because it came to a reality like, I am not capable of controlling my own life and my destiny. It's like anxiety just filled me. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I barely know how to like survive. And the thought of having to have complete control over my future, like if I mess this up, my life is messed up. And I remember just feeling so anxious, like, shoot, I don't know what I'm doing. So now there was this panic, and then the panic just led me to, you know, getting high more, drinking more, being more like just diving into a place of numbing the pain. And so eventually, I'm at this dark place, and I decide like I need something. And I said, all right, I'm gonna just go to a church, because I don't know what else I need to do. And I walk into this church, small church, and I remember sitting in there, and I definitely didn't know how to dress in church. I didn't know the rules. I don't know when you stand up, when you sit down. I don't know how anything goes. And I remember listening to the sermon, and I don't remember a word of the sermon. But when it was over with, a lady comes up to me and she says, young man, are you saved? I didn't know what that meant. I was like, what is saved? Like, saved from what? Who's chasing me? Am I being, was like saved a video game, a coupon, or some like, what does saved even mean? And in my brain, the only thing I could think of was like, I think she means, am I like my grandmother? Like, am I super religious or something? And so I told her no. And the look of shock and horror on her face, I'll never forget it, because she was so scared. And I think she just never heard anybody just blatantly say no to a question like that. And I remember her just like saying, can I pray for you? And I was like, okay. And she prays for me. And that stuck with me. You know, I was just like, man, I wonder why that bothered her so much. You know, like I just didn't get it. Like I hadn't heard the gospel at this point in time in my life. I hadn't heard that I was a sinner. I hadn't heard like Christ died for my sin. You just knew the little things. You know, I didn't go to church really. So I go to bed that night, I have the same dream, flying over this dome. And I'm like, this time when I get inside of the dome, I see the rocks starting to rise up. And when the rocks rise up, it's formed in the shape of like a basket. And inside of the basket is a child. And the child, like rapidly before me, becomes like the face of a man. Like I can't make out his face, but it was like a beard grew, and it just looked like a man formed from the face of the child. And it freaked me out, and I woke up and I was like, what the heck was that? So I knew the nativity story, and I thought like, could that have been like Jesus? And I don't know, but it weirded me out, because I had the dream at first, and then I saw the Dome of the Rock, but I just thought maybe there's something Muslim about it, and I'm over it. I'm not doing it. But it definitely intrigued me. So that summer, did a lot of crazy stuff. Pregnancy scares, STDs. Got arrested. One of my closest friends got arrested. I had to bail him out of jail. So it was just a wild, hard summer. And I found myself really depressed. And I got a full scholarship to go to college in this process. So now I'm on this full ride, but I'm not excited about it. I'm just kind of like, man, I get to go to college and I'm breaking cycles and I did what no one else did. When I get to campus, I don't know anybody and I don't know who to talk to and I don't know how it goes. And there's one girl that I know that I went to high school with, just one girl, and she says, hey, there's like this freshman orientation meeting where you go around to all the different clubs and groups. And so I go to that little orientation thing and she gives me a pamphlet for a Bible study that she's a part of. And I'm like, okay, I'll go check it out. I don't care. I would have went to anything. I would have went to the Baha'i faith. I would have went to Rastafarianism. I would have went to anything. I just was like, man, I just know I need something, but I don't know what I need. And I get to this Bible study, and it's my first time around Christians like my age. So it's kind of weird because I'd only seen like my grandmother. And they're talking about stuff, and I'm like, what the heck are y'all talking about? Like, who is Jeremiah? Like, what the heck is all of this? Like, these are these random stories I just never heard. And it bothered me because I thought I was pretty intelligent, and I felt frustrated that I didn't know what they were talking about. So I just kept coming back. I kept coming back. And, there was a day where they were talking about a trip they were going to take, a conference that they were going to go to. And I didn't think much of it because it was kind of like, I'm not really interested in a Christian conference. Doesn't matter to me. So I kind of blew it off. And I remember standing out on the campus and I was really depressed. I was really frustrated at my life and just like, man, I don't know where my purpose is, where my worth is, where my identity is. And I thought to myself, man, I just don't want to be here anymore. And a car drove up. And it was one of the guys from the Bible study. And he says, hey, man, what do you got going on? I said, I'm nothing. He said, you should go to the conference. And I said, yeah, I don't know. He said, it's in Atlanta. And I was like, oh, I loved Atlanta. So in my mind, I'm thinking there's girls in Atlanta. It's fun in Atlanta. There's just better things in Atlanta. So I was like, let me go because I want to go to Atlanta. So we did this fundraiser. We raised the money. We get on the bus, we get to Atlanta at this conference, and I had never seen so many Christians who looked regular. In my mind, I grew up thinking Christians wore like white gloves and like suits and ties and like everything like my grandmother. So I'd never seen anything like this. Like, I was like, what the heck? They dress just like me. Like they have hair like me, like they walk like me, they seem like normal. And I couldn't process what I was seeing. I was like, how? And I remember thinking to myself, if they can be Christian, maybe I can be Christian. Really? And I remember thinking that. And I remember the first day just kind of like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be Christian too. And just like, yeah, I'm a Christian now. And that's, I made up my mind. I'm a Christian now. And there was a part in the day, that day, where you go out and you share your testimony with people and you share the gospel. And I remember going out and I went with a group of guys from my school and they were like, hey, Lecrae, you share. And then I'm sharing, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just like, I'm probably saying something like, yeah, man, and God is good, you just gotta like do the right thing. And I don't even know what was coming out of my mouth, but I remember him pulling me to the side and him saying, hey, Lecrae, I think you have faith, but not a saving faith. And I was so mad at him. I was like, who are you to tell me I don't have a saving faith? And then that bothered me. It's like, what the heck is a saving faith? What does that even mean? And so I'm mulling over that and it's bothering me. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, what does that mean? Now, mind you, I'd never really heard the gospel even still. So all I saw was like Christians hanging out, praying, singing songs, like reading the Bible. I still hadn't heard the gospel. So the last night of the conference, there's a kind of a sermon and like a big celebration. And the pastor gets up there and he starts telling the story of Jesus. And he's saying how they strung him up on this cross and they drilled railroad spikes into his wrists and he couldn't breathe unless he pulled himself up, and he died from asphyxiation, but he had lived this perfect life, and that he lived the life that I couldn't live and then died the death I deserved to die. And I remember sitting there thinking, you can forgive me? You know, like it was the first time I felt remorse. I had hurt so many people. I had done so many girls wrong. I'd stolen money from, you know, close friends. I had committed crazy crimes that I didn't get caught for. I had done so much and I was so callous, but I was just trying to find a sense of worth and identity. And then he ends the sermon by saying, do you not know you were bought with a price? And I think that's when it clicked for me, that I was bought with the price, that yes, my dad had abandoned me. Yes, I've been abused. Yes, I've been molested. But I had been bought with the price, and that Christ had died on the cross and resurrected for my sins. And in that moment, the lights came on. You know, it was like, I can't describe it other than just like everything made sense. You know, like it was like the world was brighter. I had on all this jewelry, and I remember walking the streets of Atlanta, taking off my jewelry, putting it into like people's hands and just saying, you know, man, like you can have it all. Every dollar I had, I was giving it away to homeless people, and I was just like, I'm free. You know, and I just remember an overwhelming sense of joy, you know, just like this overwhelming sense of joy. And that night, a lot of the students were just chanting, you know, the name of Jesus over and over again. It was like New Year's, and they were, Jesus, Jesus. And I remember going on top of the roof of the hotel and just looking over and just seeing a crowd of them cheering and cheering and saying, Jesus, Jesus, and thinking like, man, this is my new life. Like I have a new lease on life. Now, do you want me to keep going and get to, because it gets dark. All right. So now I'm in this new season. Everything is great. I'm extremely passionate. I write my testimony out. I type it out on paper and start passing it around on campus. Like I want everybody to know Jesus. And everyone's shocked. Like, what the heck? My friends are like, so you done sleeping with girls? You done smoking weed? Like you done with all this? I'm like, I'm done. But you know, I was so zealous. It was like I was a speedboat. And the thing about a speedboat is eventually, if it's in the middle of the ocean, if you give it all the gas, it's gonna run out eventually. And I think there's, you know, there's 3 stages in most Christians' journey, right? The stage 1 is the awakening stage, where you're just like, oh my gosh, God is real. Stage 2 is the development stage, where you're like, I gotta learn everything I possibly can because my life has been radically changed. And I jumped into stage 2 and I was learning, consuming the Bible, consuming, reading, doing all these things, changing my mental maps. Stage 3 is productivity, where you just gotta be productive. Now you wanna join the choir, you wanna preach, you wanna sing, you wanna volunteer. And I was hitting them, awakening, development, productivity. I'm running a million miles an hour, and I'm loving every minute of it. The problem for a lot of us, though, is that we hit a wall. Crisis happens, danger, someone in the church fails you, a pastor, you know, has an affair or lets you down, and now you hit this wall and you're like, what do I do? Because the stuff I was doing isn't isn't fixing this. And for me, my wall was coming, and I just didn't know it. If you fast forward the tape a little bit, being extremely productive, get involved in campus ministry, start taking Bible classes, and you know, I always loved making music, so I'm starting to create music, and I'm making these little tapes around campus, and people are loving my music. And then the music starts to spread around campus, and then from campus it spreads around the city, and then the city, the state, and then I start getting invited to go to different outreaches and small churches to do my songs, and I am just going, man. It is great, and I'm just preaching the gospel, making songs, serving people, and it just gets bigger. It feels like every year. I get married. We moved to Memphis. We moved to one of the worst neighborhoods in Memphis just because we wanted to serve Jesus. I mean, 13 people are murdered in the 3 years where we in our neighborhood. You know, we're sleeping on the floor sometimes because there's gunshots going through the windows and going through the house. And I wake up and I talk to my next door neighbor. I share the gospel with her. I give her one of my CDs. The next day, her throat is slit and she's like in the gutter bleeding, and the police are knocking on our door asking us questions. And it was just, that was the environment that we were living in, but we were loving being able to serve the people. It was still beautiful. My wife was mentoring girls. There were other kids who had never seen a married family before, and we just got to like really be the hands and feet of Jesus. And I'm traveling, I'm doing missions trips, and I'm leading Bible studies, and the music stuff grows even more.
And how old are you when all of this is happening?
At this time, I'm probably 26. So I'm 26 years old during this stage of my life. And stuff is starting to just build and build. By the time I'm 30, we moved to Atlanta. I've got 2 kids now, 2 babies that are 18 months apart, you know, like a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old essentially. And we're living in Atlanta, and now things really rev up. Because now I'm around so much industry, I'm around the music industry, I'm around like producers, and different people are kind of helping us to give us more insight on how to navigate things. So now I'm traveling around the world doing music.
And how long have you been walking with Jesus at this time?
At this time, I've been walking with Jesus for probably about 10 years. So I'm about 10 years in the faith at this point in time in my life. And I've done the Bible studies, I've taken the Bible classes, I've read the books, I've spoken at the churches, I've performed the songs, and there's no higher point in productivity stage of Christianity there could be. Mission trips, songs, speaking at churches, like everything, just in it, just go, go, go. And then I start doing these big tours, and I'm very naive, right? Because I've kind of been in my ministry bubble, but I go on some of these bigger tours, these bigger Christian tours. And, you know, there's Christians there who they've kind of like, I mean, essentially they're just lukewarm. You know, they're not really walking the walk. And I'm scratching my head like, wait a minute, everyone knows you. You're on stages everywhere and you're doing all the stuff, but you're not serious about your faith. Like, what the heck is going on? And some of them were jaded. Some of them probably started off strong and they fell. Some of them may not have even been Christians. They were just doing stuff because they got a chance to make money. But it really messed with me. And I started thinking, like, how is this possible? Like, God, what is going on? Why is everyone singing these songs and listening to these people? And these people behind the scenes are not followers of Jesus. And now it's messing me up. And I'm starting to get jaded because I'm seeing it more and more. The more I get into like certain spaces in like professional Christianity, so to speak, the less I'm seeing like people who are just passionately in love with Jesus, filled with the Spirit, like wanting to serve him. And it just becomes like the norm. And I felt like my soul started to get numb. And so when I go back home and be with my family and be with my church community, it's like, oh yeah, this is it. But then I was spending more time on the road around kind of this kind of like nominal, mediocre lukewarmness. And you know, you start comparing yourself to them and they become the standard. And you're like, well, as long as I'm not as bad as them, I'm good. So, you know, if they're doing drugs, snorting cocaine, and I'm just getting a little drunk, I'm good. And I didn't even know Christians could drink. I was like, wait, Christians can drink? And so I don't know, you know, I'm only 10 years in, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know all the rules for real, but culturally, I know it scripturally or whatever.
And Lecrae, if you don't mind me adding this, I think it's also important to know for people who may not know you that you are also experiencing something that not a lot of people have experienced as far as pioneering in an industry where, I mean, rap music, Christian, I mean, this is all new, not just for you, but in general.
Yes. So this is not just new for me, it's new for everyone. No, I had never, I'm like walking in all these worlds as a Christian, as a rapper, and it's stuff I'd never experienced before. I don't know how to navigate all these spaces and what to do. And some people are upset at me because they think I'm a little too like, oh, he's too serious about Jesus. And this is the Christian community, right? And then, you know, there's moments where I get to move in secular spaces. You know, I get to do this this rap cipher where I'm the only Christian rapper there. And so it felt good to just represent Jesus and like say the things and like hear people say, man, like he killed it. Even though like afterward they're inviting me to the strip club and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to the strip club. What are you talking about? But it was a tear on my soul, right? And so the 3 stages of Christianity that most people cap out on, you know, the awakening, the development, and then productivity, most people cap out because they hit a wall and they don't know, they go back to the sermons they used to listen to and they're not working. They listen to the songs aren't working. And so they think, well, I don't know what else to do. And at this point in time, I'm reading the Bible, but it felt like black ink on white pages. You know, it was like, all I can hear are the sermons that I used to hear. And I'm not really asking God to change my perspective. I'm not really saying, God, show me something new, because I don't know I need to see something new. I just know the old stuff doesn't seem to be working. And now I'm actually having more opportunities to do more mainstream stuff. And so now I'm really walking in these 2 worlds a lot more often, on the secular side, you know, and on the Christian side. And I feel like that's where Satan really began to wear me down. Because during this time period, you know, now I've been a Christian for quite a while at this point in time. I've been a Christian for probably 13, 14 years at this point in my walk. I know all the big name pastors, all the worship leaders, everybody. I know who's real, who's, I won't say not real, but who's real and who's struggling. And, you know, I guess I was arrogant in some senses. I felt like, yeah, like I'm above them, you know? And during this time period, I felt like my world started to slowly crumble. The first thing that I remember hitting me is honestly my marriage. Just her and I just having this tension, and me not feeling like it was healthy in the house. You know, just a lot of arguing. I'm gone all the time. And it got to a point where I was actually glad to be on the road, because then it's like she was like, oh my God, he's back. And I was like, you know, it was like we were actually glad to be out of each other's hair. And that was a dark season for us. You know, we just really weren't connecting. But and I probably would have gotten a divorce, but I felt like, man, I'm too popular. People know me, so they'll say that's a sin, and then I won't look like the righteous person. So I can't even divorce her. So, you know, we'll just like not really communicate well, and we're just two ships passing in the night. Then there was just a lot of social unrest in society. People started dying, people were getting murdered, and it was really bothering me, you know? And I felt connected to these communities, and it wasn't a political thing for me. It was just like, I don't want to see people getting shot, especially innocent people. But then there started to be some backlash and people saying I'm being political, and I was like, I'm not trying to be political, but I had never been like, I never faced that much scrutiny from fans before. And so people really were starting to hate me. And I was like, oh, I don't like the way this feels. This is making me feel like how I felt as a kid, like not being wanted by my dad and being abused. And I don't have a place to run now because my wife and I are not on the best terms. And so I just felt alone. And in feeling alone, you know, now the Bible and the sermons, they weren't the same. It was like, I listened to the sermon a million times, it's not changing anything. I feel alone. I don't know what to do. And so I started numbing the pain. I started drinking a little more heavily to numb the pain, and then started spiraling into depression. And I remember going to a doctor, and I didn't know at the time it was a pill farm. And so it was kind of like a sketchy doctor, and he prescribes me Xanax. And he's like, man, I should have known, because he said take 2 bars. And I was like, that's what we call them bars in the street. Like, why are you calling them bars? He's like, take 2 bars and you'll be great. And I started drinking and taking Xanax. And now I'm developing this addiction just to get through the day of popping Xanax, taking pills. And then I had a show, and there were some rappers who were not Christians who invited me to come back. And generally, I'm the guy who like loves Jesus, and I'm helping them see Jesus. But this night, I just didn't care. And I was drunk. And they were like, man, you smoke? And I felt like, man, I don't want my witness to be tarnished, but I was already drunk and I didn't care. And then I'm smoking with these guys. So now I'm smoking, I'm drinking, I'm taking pills. And I remember just feeling like a double life. Just like, I don't like this. Like, I don't know what's real and what's not real. And I just felt so much pain. And now, it wasn't just certain Christians that I knew who were mad at me for like speaking out against like social injustice. They were like leaders that I respected. And that probably hurt me the worst, because some of them I knew. And I remember I did an interview with the pastor, and there was like a miscommunication in the interview, and he said some stuff I don't think he meant to say. But people felt like I just let him get away with murder by not standing up. And I had people calling my phone telling me that I was the worst human being in the world, like Christian leaders, like, I'm ashamed to know you. And it just took me down a dark, dark place, where I just felt like, if this is how Christians act, I don't know if I want to be a Christian. I don't know if this is real.
Wow.
And one of the most prominent, like, theologian, Christian debaters, like, publicly came out against me, and I looked up to him so much. It hurt me to hear him say these things about me that weren't true. But I was just a figure to him. I wasn't like a person. And so I remember saying, I'm done with this. I'm done with this faith. And I went home to my wife and I said, hey, just so you know, I'm not doing Bible study with the kids anymore. I don't think this is real. And I told my friends, I don't think Christianity's real, and I don't want to be a Christian anymore.
Wow.
And I think they were all like, it's a phase, you'll get over it. And I was just very depressed. Very depressed, very anxious, but I didn't know what else to do. And now, if there's no God, then what matters? Like, what is good? If there's no, if I'm just a cosmic accident and a bunch of molecules, I don't matter, I don't have purpose, which is my worst nightmare, by the way, because my dad left, I've been abused. So being purposeless was like the worst place to be, but I just was like, well, there's nothing else, it's just me. I'm back to that kid who had to listen to the atheist, and it was so sad. It was so depressing. I couldn't pull myself out, and I would just drink and pop pills and just live in a spiral. And I didn't want to do Christian stuff anymore. If I got invited to a Christian show or something, I would never talk about Jesus on stage because I was like, I can't do that. So I would just talk about good things. And Satan was like, you don't have to do those. At this time, I had a big song blow up on the radio, on secular radio. So now I was getting invited to do secular shows, mainstream, big radio shows. And that's really where I felt like Satan just crept in and was like, come hang out with us. Nothing matters.
Yep.
And now my green room is always stocked full of liquor. Now everybody's smoking. And I, you know, it was just like, this is the space that you get to live in. And I mean, there were some nights where I remember some of my guys on tour having to like put me in my bunk because I had passed out. Like one night, I think I passed out in front of the tour bus and they had to like drag me and put me in my bunk. And I knew this was not okay, but I was like, but what is okay? Because if there's no God, then what does matter? So anyway, I'm going long, I'm sorry. But I remember just being at my lowest of lows, and I had gotten extremely intoxicated, was paranoid from some of the drugs that I had taken. And when I woke up in the morning, everything was like numb. Like the world seemed dimmer. Like, I don't know how to articulate it, but it's like a gray filter was put over my lenses. And I was like, what the heck is going on with me? And I tried to watch a TV show and I was like, it's not enjoyable. And I had no interest in anything. And then I ordered some food. I remember when it came, I couldn't eat it. And I was like, I have no appetite. And I thought, this must be depression, like clinical depression. And now I was scared because I was in like the worst condition I've ever been in. So now I'm like really freaking out because I'm like, I don't care about anything. And I just wanted to die every day. I remember feeling like, this is it. I can't live like this. And I sat in my garage. I'm sitting in my garage in this beautiful house with more money in the bank than I've ever had in my life. I'm sitting in a Mercedes with the engine running, and I'm wanting to close the garage door. And the only reason why I didn't do it was because I didn't want my kids to find my cold, lifeless body and be scarred for life. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's up and what's down. And I remember telling my wife, I said, hey, I'm in a dark place and I just need some help. I don't know what to do. And I went to bed that night and I had a dream. And in the dream, I heard the voice of the Lord say, I never left you. And I got up. Sorry. I got up and I opened up the scriptures, and there's a verse in there where Peter is, Peter's, out cooking the fish, and Jesus comes over to him after he had died and is resurrected, and he says, Peter, do you love me? And he's like, yeah, of course I do. And feed my sheep. And I felt like God saying to me, like, you messed up. I still love you. And I want you to feed my sheep. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no possible way, God, I've just like, I'm too far gone. you know, I've just blown it. And he's like, no, feed my sheep.
Feed my sheep.
Man, just the process started there. I remember, you know, crying to my wife and just apologizing and saying, man, something's got to change. We got to get out of here. We took a trip. I ended up going to Egypt just to see a different perspective, and being out there with some Christians out there was so much different. And we did this tour with this archaeologist, and the archaeologist was showing us this Pharaoh who let a bunch of slaves get away. And I'm like, oh, this is like Moses in the Bible. And the archaeologist was like, I don't know anything about the Bible. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You know, she's like, yeah, I don't know anything about the Bible. I just know the slaves came and he let them get away, and this is history. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. I've seen the Nile. I'm just seeing it. And I'm like, I hear God saying, I told you, I'm here. And the breaking moment for me, I think, is when I'm sitting in, we took another trip to Mexico because I just was like, okay, I'm trying to get healed. I'm trying to find some clarity. And now I'm starting to read my Bible more. And I'm like, I'm trying to walk with God and just like, God, help me. What's going on? And I'm reading my Bible, and I'm in the book of Jonah. And I look out the window and the ocean's out there, and I see, you know, the water, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this anxiety, all this stuff is still weighing on me, God, and I just want to die. At least I'll be with you. I just want to die. And something was saying to me, just take a knife and kill yourself. It's fine. You go be with God. And I look at a knife on the counter. My wife is taking a walk. I look at the ocean. I'm looking at the book of Jonah in front of me. And I look at the water, and I see water just vertically rising up out of the ocean going into the sky. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, now I'm depressed, anxious, and crazy. And out of the water comes a whale. The water was coming from his spout into the sky. And I'm sitting there looking at the book of Jonah, and I just start weeping. So I'm saying, God is present. He's here. He's with me. And, you know, it was like, from that moment, God began to put certain people in my life, an incredible therapist who loves Jesus. And I started to realize I hit awakening. I hit development. I hit productivity. But I couldn't get to the next level because the next level was inner work. I had to let the Spirit of God do some work in me. And I just couldn't do the same old things. It was a deeper thing of sanctification that needed to take place for me to become who God really wanted me to be. But I thought if I just do all these right things, I'll be the person I need to be, instead of realizing, no, I need to let the Spirit transform and change me and do a work in my heart on a consistent basis. And I feel like, you know, that was probably, man, it was 9 years ago. I feel like what God has done in the last 9 years is take me through the deepest inner healing, inner work. I've been able to like just sit and think about the little boy who was abused and abandoned, and just say, man, if you were here right now, this is the prayer I would pray over you. And then just to know that God was considering that little boy at that time in my life. When I ran from him, like Jonah, God was like, I'm gonna just swallow you up whole, but I'm not done with you. You're still gonna go to Nineveh. You're still gonna get out here, and you're still gonna be used for my kingdom and for my glory. And I feel like stage 5, which should be the final stage, is just living a life of love, just loving people. You are constantly being worked on internally, letting the Spirit do some healing in you. But now you can just love folks. You don't have to build this big reputation, be the most popular, be the most famous. You can just sit and love people the way Jesus loved people, the way he loved me. And so, yeah, I feel like God took somebody who didn't know their worth, their value, and their purpose, and showed me that my identity's in Christ. And he never let me go. Even when I tried to run from him, Psalms 23 says, goodness and mercy shall pursue you all the days of your life. Pursue is like a hunting word. It will chase you down. I could not run from his goodness. On my worst day, he hunted me down. And he's reconstructed my life.
Lecrae, for those who are watching right now, if you could have been in your life at that moment where you begin to be zealous for the Lord, if you could be there for that guy, just wanting to tell everybody about Jesus, gifted, talented, what would you say to that guy in that place if you were able to be there?
Yeah, I think if I was to talk to the zealous, young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed version of me, I would say, man, continue in your zeal and your passion. I think that's a beautiful thing. But take time to read the book of Job. Take time to realize that the Christian journey is not a mountain to be climbed. It's peaks and valleys will come. And so, don't be discouraged when you meet a valley, because the zeal and the passion you have is real and it's great, but you can't zeal your way out of a valley. You're gonna have to depend on the Spirit of God. And a lot of what you're doing now is dependence on you, on your passion, on how well you communicate, on your songs. And it's the Spirit that does the work. It's not you. And you're gonna need the Spirit to carry you in a low time. And hopefully I would say also, man, get some older, wiser people. You know, the oldest person I had in my life was maybe 2 years older than me. You know what I mean? So just a more seasoned Christian around me who can just show me like, hey, I didn't know where to turn. I didn't have anybody to turn to. What do you do? I mean, when you're a young Christian man, you're on the cover of a magazine, you win a Grammy, like, if you don't have wisdom and guidance in your life to turn to, like, who do you talk to? Who do you go ask? Like, hey, how do I handle this? If you're a Christian leader and people know you and you hit a wall and you're doubting, where do you go? Because you're embarrassed. You're like, I don't want to tell them that I'm struggling, because then they're going to be like, what? You know, I didn't even want to go to a therapist at first, because I was like, they're going to be like, I'm a fan. And now you got to like see the dark side of me. But I'm like, man, show off your scars, because your scars are the evidence that wounds can heal. And if you don't admit you're wounded, you can't get any healing. So just let people see the scars. Let them see the pain. Also would have told that younger version of me, hey, Jesus has healed you, but he is still healing you. And that's a lifelong process.
Lecrae, who is Jesus to you?
Oof. Jesus to me is my example, my hope, my salvation, my rabbi. I'm one of his disciples. He's someone that I want to follow, and someone that
That's deep.
I want to emulate in every way. How dependent he was on the Spirit, I want to be that dependent on the Spirit. How kind and caring he was, I want to be that kind and caring. How honoring to the Father he was, I want to be just like Jesus.
Lecrae, for those who are watching and are connecting with different parts of your testimony, whether it is the going back to old patterns, feeling abandoned, feeling lost, maybe hearing the atheists and not knowing what to do, who to believe in. But for those who are listening to you, for those who are listening and are saying, man, I don't know, I want what you have. I want peace in my life. I want freedom in my life. I don't want this addiction in my life. I don't want to live in the shadows. Could you pray for those who are watching right now and are saying, man, I want to live for Jesus?
Absolutely. Is that too loud out there? Okay.
Oh, thank you guys for watching this video. This testimony this guy was giving, it was touchy, and then there was a good, there was a bad on this testimony. The bad is that he didn't know Christ. The good is he become to know Christ. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos. Please subscribe to the creator of this video in the bio. Thank you.